good morning, and welcome to Duality. I am your host, Ash, and I am here with Kaden. Thank you so much for being
Thank
here.
you for having me.
Oh, you're so
Thank
welcome. You're so welcome. And all in divine timing.
Yeah, it was divine timing. Like, good things comes to those who wait, so it was, like, nice.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
it's funny how we're finding like these other things that we're participating in, it's all coming into alignment at the same time.
Exactly. It was, like, right
One
timing.
after
That was
another,
crazy.
yeah.
Yeah, so it all made sense. So, and I'm excited because I always wanted to be on the show. I was like, I can't wait to be on the show.
Oh,
I seen a couple of my friends. I was like, wait a minute, hold on. I gotta put my foot in the pot. I gotta get there. So yeah, it was dope. So like-minded people coming together. So I was like, no, I gotta come. So yeah, and it was a mighty long time too, because I've been watching for a minute. So
Oh, thank you so much.
yeah, as I said, congratulations, because a lot of things come to an end, but you're like still here, still present, still creating. So
Doing my best.
yeah, hats off to you. Like you're doing
Thank
it.
you.
So, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a journey, something that we were talking about a little bit is like, when you have these projects and like how life happens and it's so hard to like continue to move forward in one particular thing at times when it seems almost like everything in life is coming in between it.
Yeah.
You know?
Life be lifing. That's what I be saying.
Life definitely is
Life be lifing.
sure.
Life be lifing, yo. You
OD,
gotta,
yeah. And it's like it's cool because it's like, this is like peace for me too, coming up on here and like having that sense of routine has been like a really great sense of just reminding me of my balance, just as the whole intention of this podcast.
Exactly.
It does the same thing for myself,
Exactly.
So it brings me into a space where it's like, all right, well, for those of you that don't know how I go about the process of either picking the topic and or having the host on, it kind of goes in the sense of like, say I have a host, just like we did, we have like a pre-screening kind of phone conversation or sometimes in person, whatever happens. And we talk about what's coming up for us both. So like, what's going on in your life, what's going on in my life, and then we kind of find an in-between thread, right? So that we can have it be as present as possible, because it's like, I found in the past, like in the beginning of the podcast, I would be like, all right, like, yeah, let's plan this for a month, right? And then like the month comes and I'm not as excited about the topic as I was a month prior, I'm like kind of ready to talk about something else.
Right. You feel a whole different way about something, or
yeah.
just not in that space to talk about it.
Exactly. Because things change, and feelings change and moods change and like our lives change and certain ways that we feel can change, So it's like my whole intention is like, whether it's just me or whether I have guests on, for us to be like excited, about whatever topic it is that we're talking about. So, to get into the topic today, which hats off to you with the title because it is fire, so finding the lost spectrum of duality, right? We live in a world where there's so many extremes. You have to be this way or that way, or you have to have this belief system or that. And like, if anything in between seems to be invalidating or invalidated, by the masses. And, something that you had made a good point on was talking about the grace period and like the grace of gracing.
like our generation lacks grace. So it's like, I think things come so instantaneous, like so many images, so many like concepts, so many different viewpoints, and they're overly passionate, so sometimes they can be mad convincing. And like we get into these like groups. It's almost like now I feel like how social media and how like our generation is set up is like a multiple choice. It's like we're filling out bubbles, right? And they don't have no context.
And they look like bullets on a bio.
It's like bullets on a test, like to like, who are you? It actually, I feel like now I'm saying that everything's become a survey, kind of speak. Like, it's like we're not checking for nuances or context, right? So it's like, oh yeah, I'm a good person. What entails a good person? Because like your morals or your standards could be totally different from somebody else's compass. So it's like we filling out these bubbles and they're just like quick. We don't really sit down and let things marinate and see like, okay, what is this, And then when conflict comes up, how we deal with conflict, it's like, all right, throw it out. It's trash. It's unworthy. Like, it's not unworthy. You just didn't sit with it. You just didn't you're not even giving it the grace.
It's like you looked at your score, but you didn't realize what you did wrong or what you did right. You're not giving yourself the assessment.
You're even entertaining the score. Like, you shouldn't even have to, like, the test or that bubble doesn't exist because it doesn't define the entirety of you, right? So it's like, it's just like we trivialize every single, like, serious thing, right? So it's like, do you think kids should live? Like, yeah, I think kids should live. Like, kids should play and kids should, like, do things. But I also, they should have fun and stuff. But I also think they shouldn't, like, do things past, like, their own understanding. Like, certain things in, like, social media, certain things that hit kids or hit adults that kids shouldn't see in marketing, right? It's like we want to, like, take these, good vibes and good, like, let people, like, let them eat cake, right? But, like, nobody's realizing, like, let them eat cake comes with a consequence. It's like we want to feel good, but we want to overstimulate it. Like, we want to push it to the max. Like, it's like, nah, some things don't feel good. Some things when does it feel good and when is it a distraction?
Yeah, I feel like that's also, like, a perfect example of, like, there was that point in time, I don't know if it still happens or how long it was happening, but I remember hearing about in school, excuse me, that everybody was getting an award. Like, not just the individual children who were, getting perfect attendance and or, just doing the things that required the award. So then it's like, in my humble opinion, I feel like that's kind of, like, I understand it because, like, everyone, it gets to be a part of it. But when it comes to, like, tournaments, like even sports and things like that, like, you get it because you've worked hard to perform a certain way. So then I feel like when things like that start happening that don't have an in-between and lack balance, the, like, overachieving child and or the kid that might try a little bit harder to, just achieve something for a goal, right? Like, goals are healthy to have. May not try as hard because, like, it's like, what's the point if everyone's going to get it and none of them are going to be labeled differently? And I feel like that blanket of perspective kind of comes from, a lot of us in our generation coming from the extreme of the generation before, which was, like, not getting credit for anything, and now everyone's getting credit for everything. But at the same token, it's almost like no one's getting credit, because if everyone's getting credit, then who's actually really being acknowledged?
Right? Exactly. And then that comes out of, like, on the opposite side of the spectrum, that comes out of consequence too, because it's like, you could be, like, giving me this false sense of purpose, right? Like, so because I'm winning or I'm participating and getting awards, right? It's like, some people failed and totally was like, okay, this is not my thing. I'm going to try something else and be gifted in that, or, like, just find creative new avenues. But, like, if we're creating these false senses of, like, grandeur, then we're kind of, like, it's kind of delusional a little bit. So it's like, you don't go through that struggle to, like, you don't do that ego death to, like, become something new,
to figure out what's for you,
else, or figure out what's really for you, what you like. Sometimes we need those tribulations and turbulences. They bring you to more conclusions and more growth. I think, like, everything now is just very surface based. It's like instant mashed potatoes, and it's like, nah, sometimes that elbow grease, that extra work, it's like, it just tastes way better. Like, things worked for, like, are just way better.
It's closer to source. Yeah. It's closer to source no matter which way you slice it.
Yeah, and it's like, I'm not looking for perfect. I'm just looking for real. Just looking for honest, right? So I'd rather you just tell me what it truly is. Don't try to, like, fix it up or just, like, dress it up or in denial. Like, I just can't stand that. I don't like that. Like, it's frivolous to me. It doesn't bring me any source or any, like, it doesn't feel good. And then, like, I want everybody to make sure they feel comfortable. So that's why, like, me, like, understanding, like, spectrums and stuff, because I've always played in between. Like, I've always, even the way I write, like, songwriting is, like, I talk about things that nobody seldom talks about, right? Like, the uncomfortable conversation. Like, I'm that person, like, everybody farts. Nobody wants to talk about it, though. And that's okay, but, like, still, everybody farts. That still happens. It's like, everybody, people like, ew, everybody farts. Like, you know you farted. Like, you farted yesterday. Like, why are you adding to the hoopla? Like, ew, like, like, grow up. Let's grow up here. Like, you know, like, and it's just, I've always been that kid. And it's just like, okay, let's talk about it, you know? But now we're, like, getting too comfortable putting masks over everything. And now it's, like, getting into, like, a lot of people don't understand, like, when I was younger, I was like, yo, self-righteous is not always a good thing. Like, you know, the Crusades were righteous, you know, and they slaughtered masses of people for their message, for their righteousness, right? So it's like, too far left is, like, wrong, too far right is wrong. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, always try to find that. It's always navigation. So it's like trying to find that navigation of, like, grace, you know, and it's like centering yourself, like, okay, it's not all about me. You know, it's like, it's other things I could learn from. And now it's like, oh, I know everything.
It's like the grace, understanding, compassion, accountability, you know, is like that middle ground. And I feel like a lot of us miss it at times because we get so wrapped up in our emotions, our passions, our triggers. You know, there's so many different reasons that bring us to a certain extreme kind of belief system, you know, like when we're talking politics, right? There's like people that are so this way or so that way. And like, excuse me, I've always felt like I've just never subscribed, you know what I mean? Even as, like, very young, I was always very, like, anti all that, you know? Because I'm like, this system's not built for any of us, but okay.
Yeah.
You know? Like,
that's a whole other conversation.
That's a whole other thing. Whole other thing. You know? But it's like, you know, I've just, I have compassion when I see the extremes. I try real hard to. You know, I lack it sometimes, and I do my best to refine it because, you know, whatever someone's belief system is, like, based off of a survival mechanism a lot of times, you know, and not actually out of a passion.
First base experience.
And, like, when what they're experiencing, what benefits them, you know, what benefits that individual person. And, like, that's something that I've talked about in a lot of different spaces, which, you know, I feel like at the table, there's, like, the 5 things that people say, or the however many things that people say to not talk about. I've always talked about every single one of them every time I'm at the table. Well, not every time, but majority of time, because the thing is like, well, I feel like if I can't talk about these difficult things with the people which I'm breaking bread with, like, why am I breaking bread? To uphold an illusion, to keep comfortability in between us. If there's not discomfort in interactions, and listen, it doesn't need to be uncomfortable all the time. I'm not trying to poke at everyone's triggers at every moment, you know, but there's times and spaces where I'm not going to avoid conversation just because the comfort of everybody else, you know. So it's like, I think finding that balance is really important to most people. And I think that a lot of times people just don't talk about it because they're afraid, you know, they're uncomfortable and they're afraid. And, you know, although
it's inconvenient. It's like, oh, you make me feel bad. I don't want to feel like this. I play my whole day to be, like, this way, and, like, you're kind of taking me off my course, like a detour and stuff. You know what I'm saying? It's like, sometimes you need that, though. You need that, you know, turbulence. Turbulence is necessary for growth. If you don't have turbulence, like, then you're not gonna, where's the improvement? Like, you know, there's been times, like, talk about turbulence. There's been times I've done shows, and there probably will be times I do shows where it's nobody comes. Nobody may not come, and, like, that's okay, because I have to be okay with some things not being okay. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's my balance. Like, because then they'll have this false sense of, like I said, this false sense of grandeur. Like, oh, everybody knows me. Everybody comes to my things. Everybody, and if it doesn't, that's all right. Like, we have another thing. There's been so many shows I didn't even get an applause. My early days, right? And, like, people were like, yo, you should have did this, you should have did that, you should have yelled, you not mad, you don't feel that? And
all the unwarranted opinions.
Yeah, like, it's like, you don't feel that, ain't you mad? It's like, some people were more mad than me, and like, you know, that just shows how much I'm appreciated. But like, those days, like, growing up as a kid, like, in performing arts, we were ready for those days. It's like, you got to be ready for not being heard. Period. Like, it's not gonna be easy. You're not always gonna have a crowd, you know. Just because you do this thing doesn't mean it's gonna get that much of appreciation.
And that applies to everything in life.
Everything it applies to, you know. And in the moments of, like, it's not like what people see, you know. what you want them to see. It's like more like what those moments. It's like, what do you do in private? Like, who are you in private? Like, what's the character when it does fall down? What kind of, like, when it's not all good, what kind of compass do you have to navigate those days? And we don't talk about those days. Like, this is why depression is so high. It's like this false sense of, like, good vibes only, right?
The false sense that any other emotion besides happiness is, like, shunned and or different, and nobody else feels it. Gives it that, like, unrealistic, it makes you feel like you can't share it with people, right? And then when you do share it, people act so taboo to it, like you're a burden. You know, if someone's like, hey, how are you? And you say anything else but good or fine, everyone's like,
yeah, know? It's like I wasn't really asking.
Yeah, I wasn't even trying to get that deep. And it's like, okay, well, don't ask me. Then just say hi.
Then it's not sinful. Like, exactly. Don't ask me because I'm going to put it on you. Like, you know, like.
Even if it's short, I'm like, I'm all right. You know, it could be better. Do my best. You know, even that makes people uncomfortable.
You know, you say, hey, how are you? And people don't expect you to actually answer it. They be like, hey, how are you? Like, to, like, repeat it and then go about your day. Sometimes that takes people off. Like, I noticed that. Like, it's like, hey, how are you? Like, oh, I'm doing great. How are you? And it's like, oh, I didn't plan on getting that far.
I didn't prepare. That's like when you're working in customer service. Yeah. I feel like that happens a lot. Like, when I was working at the infamous coffee shop that I won't mention the name for legal purposes, when I was working there, and I'd be like, hey, how are you? If somebody actually stopped and, like, was like, hey, how are you? I was like, oh, thank you so much for asking. You know, like, it's exactly. Like, takes you out of the, hey, how are you? What can I get you? You know, it's like, it's like, oh, you care. Like, you actually care how I'm feeling right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, free drink for you.
Yeah, like, you just have to get ready for those moments. And, like, those moments, like, they really bring things into full circle. Like, I'm all about ego deaths. Like, a lot of my music is about ego deaths. In certain aspects, like, I like to talk about the, like, redemption phase after a fall, you know, because those really define who your character is. Like, when, you know, you fall and you're at your worst, or you think you're at your lowest, right? And then somebody said I learned something really dope. Like, somebody was like, that doesn't mean you may be in a tough spot right now. You may be in your, like, lowest. That just means you're being planted for something. Like, when all you have is, like, to be still. Like, you just feel like, I was on the phone with you, like, you feel like somebody shook up your table and, like, you had it all nice and stuff, and they just came through like, oh, this is dope, and flipped the table over, and you got all these pieces in the air, and, like, instead of trying to catch them, sometimes it's just easier to, like, see where they land. Because they may land in a totally new mapped out space that even better than you planned it, you know? And that's how I felt like over the pandemic. It was just like, yo, just be still, you know? And that's hard. That's painful. You know, being still is painful. Like, we be saying these things and we be saying these, like, conversations. I don't think people really be, like, receiving, like, or painting the picture properly of, like, yo, it's going to be days you don't feel like getting up. Like, it's going to be days some people don't even eat. Some people binge eat. Some people don't even get up and take showers. Like, that's how bad it is, let alone clean a room. Don't even pick up the phone, you know, on those days. Like, that's those days I'm talking about. You know, those days where it's like even your friends don't even recognize you because you're just, like, a totally different person. You just off your square. You out your zone. You're not the type of person they want to be around. And it's like, that's a part of you just as much as, like, and I had to realize that myself too, just as a part of, like, this positivity, this light, this energy, this, you know, these skills, and, you know, I'm able to do all these things and blessed to, you know, give back and receive, you know. In retrospect, on the other side of that coin, I'm just as dark. I'm just as, like, heavy. Like, I'm, like, really heavy. As much as I am light, my gravity is just as heavy. So I had to realize that even in the pandemic when I was my worst self. You're not your best self all the time, 24/7. And sometimes you can't force your best self. Sometimes your worst self is your best self.
Yep.
Like, sometimes you got to have that conversation like, I don't like this. I don't like this. I don't like that. I don't like about this. This is what I don't like. You got to, like, invoke that. You got to get it out. You know, you just have to admit to yourself that, like, it's okay not to be okay all the time. But you have the response. And that, too, like, we go from, I'm chatting, too. Like, we go from good vibes only and then to this weird trauma bonding in this generation. Like, we be using, like, trauma as currency, like, or we use trauma to, like, trump somebody else's experience, right? Like, well, you can't go through that because I went through this and it was way worse, and plus this, plus this, plus this, ha, I got you. You know, you're out. It's like, what? Like,
measuring each other's trauma.
Measuring traumas is, like, so weird. So we got, like, good vibes only, and then we have, like, your trauma don't match my trauma. And it's like, it's just a sit back, and it's just like, what are y'all doing? Like, what are we doing here? Like, are we? I think everybody wants to be validated, but everybody's speaking all at once, and everybody's mad that they can't, like, get a word in. But it's like, if everybody just give each other the grace, you'll see where even your enemy could teach you something. Like, even I've had conversations with people who I would never be in the same room with, and probably still never will, and that's fine too. Like, we don't have to be in the same room, but we've had conversations and actually see where the fine ground is, right? Like, past all the distractions, it's like, okay, we're human. Like, this is our experiences. Our experience are valid. Our experience matter. And it's deeper than just, like, shallow, plain view, right? Sometimes things are bigger than race. It is. Sometimes things are, you see it one way from, like, a ground level, but in a bird's eye view, you see how it affects everyone and why everyone's perspective is this way, right? From the things that we watch, things that we eat, to the media. Like, when I used to work in a grocery store, I found out, like, you know, in certain grocery stores and area codes, the reason why they have different foods is because the demographic of how many people go to that grocery store. So if you have a lot of Italians there, it's going to be broccoli rabe, spinach, kale, all that stuff. If you go to, like, a more, like, Caribbean-based neighborhood community, you're going to have, like, more ethnic foods because it's based on the community, right? So it's just like that, like, having that bird's eye view is like opening your mind, like, oh, some things isn't about race, some things is about, like, different demographics or algorithms and stuff like that, like, and that's true, like, and it's manipulated that way for people to think like that. Some things aren't that deep, but it is. That's what
it is, like, in a different way that we are looking at it as.
And the more you understand that is the more you understand you don't know a lot. It's like, dang, now I gotta backtrack a little bit because everything I set my mind in this trauma. So, like, my personality is based off this experience or these experiences. But when you learn, like, when somebody teaches you, your own enemy teaches you something, right? It causes you to backtrack and rethink every experience that you had. And then the world gets that much bigger, but that much smaller at the same time, if that makes sense. Yeah. It's like, dang, there's so many things that I don't know that I want to rediscover. And it's like, dang, how many things that I had the opportunity to discover right in front of my face that I didn't. That was how many things that was right there in my grasp, that conversation, that I didn't. Who I could have talked to that person, but I didn't, because based on, like, my mind, the mind games in my head that I'm playing.
I think it's also, like, it's also because, you know, just like a computer reaches its, like, maximum capacity, right? But you have to, like, clean it and defrag it and consolidate these different things within our being, within our mind, our spirit, our emotions, our physical, you know. And a lot of times looking at different things, it's like we go into these spaces and, like, we could look back and have these regrets, but at the same token, giving ourselves the grace to understand that, like, at that time, we didn't have enough storage for anything else. Like, we didn't realize that we were at max capacity and there was no room to download anything new, you know? So, like, within that, just giving ourselves the grace. Like, every time I try to, there's multiple cues that I see in my life that I correlate to from external internal to external, external to internal. If my check engine light's on in my car, if I don't, like, now I've grateful. I don't have a hoopty anymore. It's still nice. It's still, you know, it's not nothing new, but it's much better than
that.
like.
Yeah, we was talking about that. He was like, because I got the gas in your car.
Yeah, like, but I have to put gas in my car.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying. So even that now, like when I had my other cars, my other like lemons, it's like every single time the check engine light came on, my check engine light was coming on internally, right? So right now I know I need to get gas. I have that mindful, like, okay, well, what else do I need to like fuel within myself? Like these back, you know, we can track that. And the same thing with our phones. Like we have a bunch of storage on our phone. We have a bunch of stuff in our storages, you know, in physical life. Like that's also happening inside of us. Got a lot of
backed up trauma. Y'all need to get y'all engines checked, your oil changed, and get your oils, all that stuff, right? Get your seats clean, check your tail lights, because it's a lot of us speeding, going nowhere. You know what I'm saying? Like that's
haste makes waste. You know, rushing to what? If you don't have a destination, it's like you're shooting and you don't have a target. Like what are you doing? You know what I mean? Besides making a loud boom and feeling the force of something, it's like you want to have a target. It doesn't necessarily mean that you know the exact thing, but you know the energy, you know the color. You know what I mean? You know what you're going towards in that way. And I feel like especially us folks in the city, like it's really hard to slow down because everything around us has been encouraged for us to speed up constantly. Speed up. Oh, you're walking too slow. You got to speed up. Like all the time, every time, like when I'm walking with my girlfriend, which she walks very fast, but I walk crazy fast and I don't realize it. She's like, where are you going? Like, where are you speeding up to? And I'm like, I didn't even realize that I'm doing that because I'm just so used to when I'm walking fast. When I'm by myself, I'm walking fast because I just want to get to my, designated place so that I can find safety.
Yeah, we speeding and we not checking engine lights. We not checking fuels. We not checking. We're not diffusing.
And then we're surprised when we break down.
Okay, so I reverse broke down, right? I broke down because I was mad happy. Right, so it's like it's the second Sonic.
That's a whole thing. That's a whole topic.
That was real. Like, It was the second Sonic Muse, and Sonic Muse is this thing I do where it's like every month with Dualitea, I curated this this show where I just wanted to dedicate, give space for my friends, a safe space for my friends to be just dope, unadulteratedly dope, and it's vendors, it's musicians and DJs, and we just come together and we just celebrate each other, and then we have special guests at the end of the night. So this is the second one. I wasn't even expecting anything the first one, let alone the second one to be dope. We maxed out. It was wall to wall, and sometimes me and Girl on the Rocks, we just be yo, you see this? You see this shit right now? You looking right? You see this? And I'm like, yeah, yo, you see this? It's it is packed. So it was and the abundance in the room, when you come, it's just so heavy and it's so joyous and it's it's so meaningful. People are complete strangers, and at the end of the night, they know each other. And that's all I wanted, a safe space. So that's been going on for this is the third one coming up soon, and I'm telling you right now, it's even bigger than the last one that I could imagine. And I was just sitting back one day, and I was on my way to work, and I was just yo, and I felt something. It was right here. It was heavy too. I was what is that? I was I was why am I I'm not pissed off. I'm just nostalgic. And I'm just on the bus, and I'm don't do it. I'm hey, I was hey, don't do it. Don't do it right now. All of a sudden, I start crying on the bus. I was nah, I know you not. I know we not crying on the bus. I was I know for sure we're not doing this right now. When we going to work, I was nah. And I was yo, our first intention was call your best friend. Call your best friend. I was all right, I'm going to call my friend because that's the only one I know, that's going to pick up. So I called, and it was just yo, we got to come outside. Who did it? And I was nobody did it. I'm just so happy. Legit, I was just so happy. That check engine was it maxed out. It was nah, take a moment to be proud of something. For once, you're always going. You're always moving. You're always figuring out something. You're always in your head. For once, just live the experience, right? Even when I'm at these events, I'm like not really there. I'm always running around. I'm always trying to accommodate for somebody else. Always. And that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing at all. But at the same time, you're working. Like, I'm emotionally working. So I'm pouring into everybody else. And by the time the night's over, I'm like, oh, we done. That's lit. Good. You know what I'm saying? Like, good. The engine is off now. You know, I can kind of relax. So when those, like, that tax came back all at once in that moment, when I just remembered like how much work, how much is working, everything that I manifested like just came true, like from a thought. And it blows my mind sometimes like how a thought to paper to like physical can just like make its way there. And then those moments you just like, aha, this is what I'm capable of, right? Like this is like the core of me. This came from me. That always like blows my mind. And, like, that's when it, like, really, like, okay, you got to take a moment to feel this. Because what you're doing here is, like, crazy, especially from the year that we had with the pandemic. Everybody was feeling it. Everybody had to kind of reinvent themselves a little bit and dig deeper to, like, recalibrate everything. Friends, family, jobs, a lot of people were like recalibrating religion, spirituality, like just finding some type of source, some type of something to ground them. Because like I said, everybody just like got flung in the air. I think, and what disturbs me a lot is like people aren't talking about it more. It's like, once again, we're all, just the society is this reactionary society, and we're just tugging and chugging forward. And everybody's like, hey, how are you? And it's like even more annoying now because it's like a psychosis to me. It's like, why are we doing this? Like, somebody needs to talk to people. Like, you guys need to talk. Everybody needs to have a conversation and be like, yo, I haven't been okay for a minute. Like, we lost 2 years of our life, and things were just, like, obstructed and ripped from us. And, like, how do you find yourself again? Or what was that like, finding yourself again? We're not talking about that. So that also came at, like, in that moment of me on the bus, like, dang, like, I really did it. Like, I really transmuted something into, like, and I didn't think I would be able to do that again after the pandemic. You know, when I was in that turbulence, I was like, yo, because I lost my voice and like I couldn't sing for months. And so to come from here to like from a hum, I couldn't even hum. Like, I started humming to now doing full shows and writing and putting on productions. It's like, yo, it came from source. I could always reinvent myself and do it again. You know, it's not on me, it's in me. And that's for everybody. Like, you, like, that's why I give people their flowers. Like, yo, you surpassed a pandemic, a panorama, a Pyrex dish. Like, you survived this is historical. I don't think people are sitting down with that. Something happened, and we need to respect it and give grace. That stuff is happening. Like, I don't think people, like, look at the news, right? And you see things going, and, like, yo, it's crazy out here, right? And what do you expect for people who lost their jobs? And some people didn't recalibrate. Some people didn't transmute into, their purpose. Some people are still in turbulence. And, like, we don't think it's normal, but it's normal.
Yeah, there was all these expectations also while it was going on. It was like, I remember, like, especially 2020, it was like when we all had off, right? And everyone's like, yeah, this is the time you take out your LLC. And this is the time, like, what are you doing with this money? What are you doing with this unemployment? And this, that, and third. And, like, all these expectations and everything thrown. It's like, surviving? Surviving. That might, like, look a little different to you than it does to me, but I'm surviving. How about you? You know, like, because it's like at the end of the day, you know, you were talking about the redemption period, right? And something that I've been coming to learn about myself is like I've thrived off of that redemption period more than most other periods in my life. And like, you know, I could correlate that to my ADHD. I could correlate that to a lot of different things, but I had an opportunity this year to reflect and be like, you know, you don't need something to completely, like, be destroyed just so that you can use it as an excuse to, like, redeem yourself. You know, you can just redeem yourself because you want to, not because it's triggered by something else, an external force. Because then you're doing it kind of for that force or from that force. So it's not being generated from love. It's almost being generated from our trauma, from our ego, from our, you know, survival space, right? So it's like, it's so much harder to uncover, redeem, rebirth yourself when you just decide it's time to, rather than being provoked by, you know, whether a job change or a relationship change or a living situation change. You know, I've let these extremes navigate my reactions for so long. I'm really learning grace, and I'm really learning the gray shades and learning to be comfortable with the fact that everything in between black and white is a different shade of gray, and it's a spectrum, and it's not always exciting. You know, it's not always super happy. It's not always super sad. And I feel like I would thrive off of like, I'm so fucking happy right now, or I'm so sad right now. I need to make a change, or I'm so happy. I need to like spread this everywhere. And it was like these extremes that I was navigating. And the thing is like, you can't find stability in extremes. It's not sustainable. Just like in, you know, the stock market, or just like in all these different spaces, like you might get a lot of money, you might lose a lot of money, but you're not guaranteed like a like fixed kind of area. That's more like in the bonds and stuff. You know, that's why people invest in different things that are less aggressive. You know, I'm correlating things with finances because I'm doing my best to learn finances because, you know, I have... It's a hard place. It's a hard place, you know? And like, it's like, it's so intimidating when you don't have the knowledge, and we're not taught this shit in school, you know, and we're lucky if someone in our family knows, and usually it's like people in our family might know, but they don't know how to explain it, you know, and it's just like, we're friends and stuff, and you just see people doing it. And it's like, right now, that's also another shade of gray that I've been really advocating for myself to find more enjoyment in, is understanding how I can work with my finances. I might not learn it all, I might not understand it all, but just to know what can help me progress rather than regress, and acknowledge the things that make me regress financially so that I can neutralize them to create a safe and stable environment with me and income. You know, because I find that like
that's
my extreme accountability, and also the compassion, but the discipline, you know, and that's the big one.
That's
like the
accountability
discipline.
And discipline is crazy because like after like that whole redemption phase, like now you want to, when you now find a trickle plateau, of peace, or are you gonna when you want to try to trickle a piece, right? When you find a trickle of peace and you like, okay, let's exploit this, let's explore this, let's like keep it the way it like it is. It's not gonna be the way it was, but like now that I found like some kind of like routine, grounding, how do I like take this momentum and grow that, right? So like we doing that, it's like, okay, the maintenance comes with that too. So like now I'm learning maintenance of like what that looks like for myself when it does plateau again, because it will. Things plateau. It's
only natural. Ebb and flow.
Yeah, what is my source, and what are my tools to navigate when that does happen? I think that's more scary for me to figure out. Like, you know, I feel like I'm on a time clock a little bit, like, okay, because you know it's not going to, and that's probably a trauma thing too. It's just like, you always waiting for around the corner, like what's around the corner, right? So it's like, oh, it's going too good.
Yeah,
it's
when something's gonna drop. Yeah, exactly,
right? It's like, you know, trauma gonna drop like a mixtape. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so it's like, you know, it's, okay, how do I take care of myself? What does that look like for myself? What are those tools and practices that I can implement for my life? And it's never going to look the same for people.
And the thing that's dope is like the fact that we acquire these tools. Like the thing is like you get dropped in the hole, like you hit rock bottom, and then you find bedrock and clay, and you start creating tools for yourself. Right. And then you rise up, you find the ladder, you get up there. Right. And then you're back, and then you fall into a smaller ditch, but you still have the tools to make your next ladder to get out. But you got to remember that. You got to remember that you have them with you. You know what I'm saying? Because these are things that you're building within yourself. It's not outside of yourself.
That's what I was like. Exactly. That's why I was like, it's not on me, it's in me. And then
I love that term.
And you could say that when you've actually, like, you know, you got little graduations in your head, you know, when those things happen. So it's like you acquire certain skills, certain survival tactics. That's wisdom right there. So it's like we said, like those low bottoms matter just as those peaks. Those valleys are so valuable. They teach you more than winning. They really do, because they teach you a certain etiquette, a certain force to move with. When things like, you know, you look at certain details a little bit more. You know, it's like when you grow up in certain environments, you know, you always know to leave the club a little early. You know, why? We having so much fun. It's good vibes only. It's like, no, it's not. I see things.
You already see what's going on. People are getting drunker.
I see certain
There's
deals. I see certain energies going on. Like, we need to leave by 2 o'clock.
Yep.
It's about 3 o'clock.
Because you don't want to leave when everybody's leaving and everyone's getting into shit.
Certain things gonna pop off. Yep. Tinted windows outside the club. Like, why we got tinted windows outside the club? Why he not rolling his windows down all the way? Like, it's time to go. You know, and I've always been that kid, like, yo, watch the clock. You know, my parents always called about like, where you at? It's like, you already know where I'm at. Like, you know, it's like those things. And like when you have those, you know, from those experiences, you have those like, okay, I have protocols for myself. I have boundaries for myself. And everybody doesn't want to talk about those though. Like, everybody want to get drunk, nobody want to eat. Like, nobody want to eat before we leave, but everybody want to get drunk. You know, everybody want to have sex, but nobody wants to talk about the precautions. You know?
Nobody wants to use protection.
And we don't do any of those things until it's reactionary. Until something goes wrong.
Nobody wants to have good health until they're sick.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's a constant thing, because it's taking for granted what we already have. But then those opportunities are the moments to grow. Those opportunities are the moments to have, you know, the gratitude for what we do have. And like, sometimes it takes that. So it's like, of course it sucks. Like, you know, you find out you find out this, you know, or that, like whatever the case is, but then you're definitely going to move differently. And maybe we have to like reevaluate, like, how can I be less of a, like, I was going to say a brat, but like, yeah, kind of a brat. And like, and like stubborn, you know what I mean? And say, because the thing is like, you communicate with the universe. Like, we're all co-creating, and I don't mean that in the gaslit way that everything that happens is on purpose. No, like, but there are reactions to causes and effects, and I believe that there's things that are in our hands.
There are peaks and valleys.
And there's things that are not in our hands, that we are co-creating, and then there's things that we don't have control over it. But I am saying that in the sense of, like, we have the opportunity to ask Creator, you know, God, whoever it is that you believe in, whatever it is that you believe in, can I have grace in this lesson, rather than do I need to like hit rock bottom for this next one? Because it's like, especially once you start like paying attention to your journey, right? And your healing journey, or whatever you want to call it, like when you start paying attention to the patterns and the cycles and the generational stuff that happens, you know, then you can start realizing like, oh, wow, I learned this from this, and I learned this lesson from this. And then you start realizing that there was a bunch of mini lessons before that lesson that we chose to ignore at the time, you know. And it's not to beat ourselves up, but it's more so like, okay, how can I calibrate my eye and my senses to become aware of when the universe is showing me signs? Because we're over here praying for signs without realizing that the signs are all around us. We just need to pray to actually be able to discern them. You know what I mean? You can look and see 1111 and 555 and all this, and you can Google what that means. But if you're not aware of what's happening in the moment that you're seeing that sign and not being present with your actual reality, it don't really mean much besides a moment of like dopamine or fear.
Or only looking for those certain signs. Because a lot of times, like you said, that overstimulation, right? So it's like we're so used to things going really good or really bad, like a reactionary type of thing. Like those signs, sometimes those signs aren't even gonna look the way you expect them to look. So we miss them a lot because it's like, oh, I gotta look this certain way. It has to look like this. If it don't look like this, then, you know, you don't pay attention to them and you take things for granted, right? Like, oh, I want this type of person to reach out to me, right? Meanwhile, you got like 20 other people who are messaging you for the same thing of what you wanted, but they don't fit the aesthetic. Yep. So I don't appreciate it as much. Yep. We do that a lot. Very shallow reactionary society. And, well, that's how social media makes it look. But everybody, when they get off that damn phone, they're the same people. Every single person is going through the same thing. Like I said, everybody
We're
farting.
all human.
Everybody farting. Nobody want to talk about it. Everybody want to come up with social media and be like, oh, ew, I would never. It's like, yeah, you would though. You have.
You literally can't control
it's
it.
those conversations you don't want to talk about. So it's like, and for the opposite spectrum of people like who feel so strongly about stuff, you know, feel so strongly about religion, feel so strongly about, you know, even sexuality, feel so strongly. It's like, you would not even say that to your cousin who's Muslim. You won't say that to your sister who's lesbian. You gonna ask her to pass the peas when you get home. Stop lying. Stop fronting. You know that.
But you're on the internet like with all caps, like going crazy. You know, but you won't even address the people in your reality.
And you're fake. Yeah. You're not even.
It's poser. It's fear based. It's like it's a front. It's an aesthetic. It's like, you know, everyone like. The advocatism, you know, I was trying to find an adjective for it when I put it the description. I was like laughing at trying to say it because like reading it, but just like looking at that and like seeing how everyone is like an advocate and like just like we were saying before, like if you give credit for everything, nobody gets credit. The same thing, if you stand up for everything, you're standing up for nothing. You know what I mean? Because at the same token, like you can't be on everyone's team if teams are opposing. You know, you can have an understanding and, you know, like you could definitely believe in these things, but to center your life over being an advocate over every single thing that seems like is morally right for you to be an advocate over is fronting. It's like, it's not real, you know, advocate for what you feel moved by.
Advocacy without challenge. If you just I think like for me, it's like advocacy without challenging the advocacy. Right, so a lot of the times, like, I'm not gonna always agree with Black Lives Matter. Some things is not agreeable. Some things, like I said, that thing about self-righteousness. When we feel so strongly about something, we feel so driven and compelled to do things. Sometimes we can override somebody else's freedom, the same freedoms that we want, right? And it's not only about like that concept of BLM. It's like how I feel about humanity, right? So. You feel so strongly about something, but you trump over someone else's experiences. And then in between, the context of in between, right? So it's like, what was it? It's like you have to be careful of that. You have to be aware. Because when you're not aware, you're just as destructive as the message you're trying to compel or you're trying to hold accountable. You're the villain. You're someone else's villain. Now you're perpetuating the trauma. You're literally perpetuating, and it's like you're not listening to your own experiences. You're not listening. Instead of you're vengeful and you're reacting, and you're not setting in place of a cure for that experience that you had. Now you're just gonna repeat the same thing. So it's like we don't have to. It's not about fighting the same way as people. It's reintroducing a new method of fighting. You know, and there are many positions in a revolution that are just as effective. You know, it doesn't look the same way as your ideas, as your feeling, as you want it to feel. It's not going to look the same way. You're not going to get there the same way as you imagine it, right? And it just brings this, like, frivolosity in the fight of things because there's so many distractions. When we just feel like it's a lot of noise, it's like, we should do this, we should do that. I want this to happen because I feel like this, and not the way the proper process of how it should go, because not only do like my image, I want my image so strongly that I override yours, right? That's what I say, like freedom, right? Nobody knows what freedom means. Nobody knows what freedom means. Like, freedom to me is not the image of you, of what you feel, of your freedom, definition of freedom. We want freedom, but okay, we get freedom, right? What happens when I have to express my freedom for everybody? You're going to be like, no.
Because freedom
that's not my definition of freedom. And then what happens is it's like, if you don't agree with my freedom, we got a problem.
It's like, why can't you be free in your way?
Now you just became the same enemy that you didn't want. Like, it's like
they're a perpetuator.
You're perpetuating it because you don't know these definitions. You're not feeling them. You're just saying them. You're not understanding the context of what freedom is. It's like, I have to be okay with my freedom not looking like your freedom, and you having the freedom to go express it without my permission, because it's not about me. That's what freedom is. That's literally freedom. Freedom cradles people. Like, I don't have ownership on freedom.
It's crazy because, like, what you're saying just shines such a light on so many different topics of, like everything, you know. Specifically, I'm thinking I might be a little bit controversial for saying that, but I don't mean it in that way. I just want to shine light to one particular thing that came to mind politically is, like, you know, when you look at the red side, right, and you see a whole bunch of people that are advocating for bodily autonomy to not necessarily receive certain injections because of their own beliefs, but yet pushing down the throat that people shouldn't have sovereignty as women to decide whether they can bring a being into the life or not, regardless of how they were conceived. You know, it's just like a perfect example of freedom trumping over freedom. You know, it's like, it's wild. Like, how can you be fighting for bodily autonomy, but only in your Christian
only in their perception.
Exactly.
It's not
because that's not freedom for everybody.
It's exactly.
So what are you fighting for? Like, you're fighting for what you want.
You're fighting for another man's image of how it should be, without any inclusion of everyone. And that is the problem. And you're going to perpetuate on the other side of that coin, while you're exploiting your freedoms. On the other side, somebody is in suffrage because of that, because their voice is not being heard. And when you are depriving somebody of their choice, when you deprive, like, a child of sugar, when they finally get in that goddamn in that cookie jar, you're gonna get a manic, diabetic, you know, angry kind of spirit that's going on, and you're gonna be like, why are they so radical? Why? Because you deprived them of a voice.
That's so true.
So
that's
now,
the thing too.
So now that you deprived me, now that you deprived my voice, I'm about to make you pay. Because I was salty being in silence. And now I'm about to show you what it feels like. But then on the same thing, it's like, did you learn anything from your silence? Did you actually plot, or did you actually just be really mad about it? And did you just, like, now, are you vengeful with it? You know, because there are some people who are totally neutral. They ain't even know it was going down. You know, and you're like, yo, why are you attacking me? Because everybody got to pay. I was in suffrage. It's like, what that got to do with me? It was a Tuesday for me.
It was
like,
a Tuesday.
I didn't know what you were talking about, bro. Like,
that's like when people react in like, whether it's, you know, walking on the street, like, or, you know, in the car or at a grocery store, all these different places where people have these wild reactions, and it's like so much deeper, you know, and it's like, you know, say the same thing goes into every space, you know, like we were talking about on the phone with the different spaces of, like, I was saying how, you know, the circle of women, like how women liberating themselves, like, you don't have to hate men to do that. Like, you don't need to, like, put men down.
That's that check engine. Like, you see that's that check engine. You ain't diffuse.
You're not actually acknowledging it. You're just like, oh, all right, whatever, I'll get to it, you know, or I'll just put some oil, I'll add to it, you know, whatever. You're not actually getting to the problem. Because then when you find out that, like, you're harboring the resentment of your father, or you're harboring the resentment of a previous partner, and then you're putting it on, like, we're all equal at the end of the day. That's the way I view it. You know, like, there's a Lakota prayer that talks about, like, you know, a lot of people say aho, right? Like, spiritual spaces or something, you'll hear a lot of people say aho, but people don't know what it means. Like, aho mataku yas, and I apologize if I didn't pronunciate that in the best way I could have, is a Lakota prayer that talks about everything is equal, from the rock nation to the plant nation to the spirit nation, the animal nation, the spirit, like, everything is equal. So it's like, when we, and that's why I love that prayer, and that's why I choose to say that rather than amen, because it holds more validity to me than the word amen does. And I like to honor it in that way, but also acknowledge where it comes from, because, like, we have people that are sitting here saying, like, you know, this, that, and the third, attacking men, attacking this, and then, like, saying aho at the end of their sentence, and they don't even know what they're saying, because it's like, that's contradictory. and on top of it, probably appropriation. And on top of it, you know, you're shortening something you don't even know the definition of.
That's what I be saying. It's that instant potato behavior I be talking about. Like, y'all just
instant
be
potato behavior. That's a goal.
Spewing things that you don't understand the gravity of them. Like, you really, or you're not even trying to learn them. Like, I'm not saying we supposed to be like so tactful. Like, okay, before I say something, I gotta. But y'all don't do no investigation behind what we talking about.
Just having balance, you know, just having
accountability, holding yourself accountable is just like just spewing things just because I was like, everybody want to be first. Nobody want to be like, you know, nobody wants to lead. It's like everybody wants to be first on a lot of things. Nobody wants to lead in love. Nobody wants to lead in, like, you know.
Yeah, people are ready to lead for themselves, you know. People
are ready or this whole concept of like, of men like, oh, I'm the leader. What is a leader, though? What does that mean to you? Like, what is the definition of a leader? Some of y'all ain't led nothing. Like, a lot of y'all have led nothing. You don't know what a leader is.
No, people are copy and pasting.
You've never had someone to solely depend on you. Or you've never had someone to solely trust you in a way of, you know,
guidance.
A life or death situation, or just people to, okay, we trust you because you instill us to get to the next step. You don't know what that looks like, but you're saying the word and throwing it around. And then you are holding somebody accountable to this standard that you know nothing of. And the same vice versa with women. It's like you're holding people to standards that you haven't even exploited yourself. You don't even know what that looks like for you. What is worth to you? But you want somebody to find you worthy. How do you even navigate that? That is so confusing.
It's like the concept of, like, you know, lighting another candle won't take from your own flame. It's like, I feel like, especially on the soil that we're on, showing that, like, colonizers taking over something is the only way to get something, right? You know, that's like the birth of our nation, country, unfortunately, you know, but it's the real, like, and so, like, from that point on, how can human beings not look at conquering things as the only way to get things, right? So it's like you have to be in tune with the other spectrum, not of just those people and those being in the history of America, the stories that they tell us, but not the other end. It's like getting in tune, simply being like, you know, if you have any Native people that you know, sitting there and listening to them. If you don't, literally just going, or even just elders, because we're all indigenous from somewhere, you know, and like listening to the people in the story and the simple things, like going outside and going into source, going inside and going into source, with just thinking about or giving space to what is balance. Because if we're thinking like we need to step on other people, especially in New York City, like I need to step on this other person's head to get to the next place that I want to in my career, is like, pause, let's reevaluate that, because I understand, I can have compassion with your understanding. Look at the history, look at the things you were taught in your life. You literally have to be a person that thinks outside the box to not think that way by default, you know? So then if you're not that way, which I have to also have compassion with, just because I've always like thought very differently and like dissected every little thing, like doesn't mean everyone has. So like everyone's gonna reach their point at different time. It doesn't make me better than anyone, doesn't make me less than anyone. It just means we all get to different things at different times. So having that period, or even just having those conversations with those radical people that are like, well, what makes you believe in this? Like, you know, and not in a condescending way, but like in a gentle way, like
let them do the thinking,
thought-provoking, you know?
Let them do the thinking.
Exactly. Like
let
you ask the questions and then they do that. Exactly.
I did the same thing. Like, ask the questions, let them ponder on it, and let them, because those are questions that people are not having with themselves, or the conversations that people are not introducing. It's just echo chambers.
And no one's saying anything. Exactly.
It's echo chambers of like, I feel we like PB&J. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we like PB&J, but it's a whole people in that same crowd with like a nut allergy.
Yep. And they're just like, we like
PB&J. And it's like,
I wish so bad I could have it even though I'm allergic. It's like, but do you? You might not even like the taste.
Yeah, it's like you just creating this, like, you're neglecting people when, like, who needs these, like, who can introduce different ideas and nuances, like, in everything. Like, and we keep, like, repeating these same things because it's like, it's not that deep, but it is, because these are just like principles that like I just try to walk with myself every day, or the patience that I try to walk myself every day when I see something crazy, or when I see stuff like that are just bizarre. You know, like I'm that type of person. Like, you know, what was the mass shooter thinking? Like, what was that person thinking before they like
got to that
acted
point
that way? Yeah. Like, what is the mindset of that person? Like, how was that day? Like,
how did they get there?
Yeah, how did you get to this conclusion to just ruin or change people's lives forever? Like, what does that look like? And what does our society look like that cradles that kind of behavior? What kind of society are we to even create that kind of behavior from somebody?
Yep.
What is the stress level that we're putting each other under? What are the voices or conversations not being heard? And just because it's not like, no, like we're giving it a platform, but it's kind of exposing things that these are real and these are what to look out for, and this is what we need to be accountable for us to, like, you know, what are we teaching our society? What are we putting in the market? What are we putting in the algorithm? Who's the algorithm? Who's making the algorithm?
Facts.
Because people don't even understand that. Like,
well, the source.
I try to tell people, like, yo, there's a whole algorithm. People make algorithms. People don't. And
what's their intention?
They don't even see that like algorithm. No, algorithm makes itself. No, somebody has to literally turn the power button on. Who created the algorithm? Algorithm could look totally like Instagram. We're hosting things, or YouTube and stuff like that. Right now, there's like this like thing on YouTube where people are noticing about the algorithm, how it's a little biased, how it could, like, you know, you're penalizing one group, but the other group for the same thing, they're not getting penalized. They're keeping all their views, and they're not getting those check marks, or they're not getting those penalties or strikes for the same exact thing. So what is it? You know, what is that thing? And we're playing with these algorithms, and we're not kind of like holding them accountable or like critically thinking about stuff. And we're just subscribing to stuff.
There's the in-between too, right? Where there's like, you know, at this point, I think we all know, like, that it's literally been disclosed time and time over again that our phones are keeping data collection, our computers are keeping data collection, there's facial recognition, there's a lot of things that are happening, right? Now, there is a monitoring of our freedom of speech on platforms. And I feel like not everybody wants to speak on that, because the people who did speak on that was like red people for Trump, right? You know, so everyone was like, well, they're banning Trump, da, 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 da. So now people that don't believe in Trump feel like, well, I can't say that because then I'm going to get looked at as a Republican, or like that I believe that. And it's like, no, you could just get looked at as a person who wants to just not be censored.
And the people who were saying that it's going to be a bad idea knew it was going to turn into this. It's like, our self-righteousness, when we don't like something, we want it gone. We want it shunned. We want it out. But it's like, you're connected to, Trump is human. You're connected to him, period. Because an example of him can be an example of you easily, right? And from us just shunning things and throwing things out frivolously and stuff like that. Yeah, that's cool. That's the fast way. That's the instant ramen. That's the mashed potato I be talking about. Like, it's like, that's the typical way of doing things. But you got to slow down. Like I said, freedom, you're not going to always like it. You're not going to always like it. And a person has a freedom to say what they want to say. And that freedom looks totally different from yours. But exploiting someone's freedom can also come at a consequence and mirror your exploitation of freedom. That's what I'm talking about. And we're not protecting that, period. You don't have to agree to protect.
Yep.
You don't have to agree to feel, you're not an enemy if you don't agree to something.
Yep.
Like, and I feel like the society now is like, if you don't subscribe to what I'm feeling, to what I'm emotionally invested in, you're an enemy.
Yep.
And you haven't even done a due process to even fully understand if you're emotionally subscribed to it. It's like, because you have so many facets to yourself, you know, like we go through about probably 20 emotions a day throughout the day. You know, you don't emotionally subscribe to like, oh, I hate men, all men should die. You do not feel like that 24/7. You do not feel like that. You talking to your best friend who's a dude right now that all men should die? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like,
That's OD.
You're lying.
Like,
you're lying
exactly.
to yourself. You're lying to yourself. And like now we taking on these traits. It's like now that's when it becomes a personality, right?
Exactly.
It's like you solidify these things, these falsities, and it's like now it's like, oh, I have to be loyal to them or I'm fake. Mm-hmm. I have to be loyal to them.
Well, that's also like the cancel culture aspect. That's like, you know, that's the cancel culture aspect in so many different spaces of like, well, this person got outed or like shown for this. Now, if I don't subscribe to either bashing and or not consuming their content and completely dehumanizing this person, then I am supporting that one slip up behavior. When it's like, you know, there's a lot of different things in which we don't understand how things get altered. There was one specific podcast that I chose to listen to because of how ridiculous it sounded. It was a clip of Joe Rogan's podcast with him and Kanye. It was like, I forgot what the clip was, but I was like, what? There's no way he really said that. I'm like, let me go watch the whole thing. He did not say that. He did not say what was in the clip. They were from two completely different sides of the podcast. Podcast was pretty long. I listened to the whole thing. And I was so happy that I did because it was such a good podcast.
I love me some Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan
really.
He's really great. Like, he's a very bro New Jersey Italian man. But he speaks on the topics that
nobody is talking about.
And he's generally pretty balanced. Yeah, like he's generally pretty balanced. Like there's things that he'll say, but if you're gonna be nitpicky and super reactionary, you're gonna do that to everybody. Like, you know, and it's like it's just to say like certain things. Some people just don't.
It's just it's a more intelligent conversation because
it's authentic.
It's bipartisan. Mm-hmm. Real conversations come from bipartisans. Real conversations come from, I call it like an umami. Right? Like, we all want things to be sweet. You know what I'm saying? Like, we want things to be sweet and crunchy and good. But what about the bitter? And what about the salty? Mm-hmm. You know, you collect those together, you get a more nuanced, you know, more flavor that's more depth. You know, it's like that umami conversation of like, oh, where we actually learn something from each other. Mm-hmm. We walk away from each other. Not just we had a good time. Not just, oh, yeah, I had fun. That was lit. It was turned. Nah, we actually, like, walk away with feeling whole. Yeah. You know, we actually walk away with something to think about, something to ponder on, you know? And I find myself, especially during, like, the pandemic, finding myself more in those, like, spaces of, you know, instead of full men podcasts of, like, Manosphere and full female podcasts, I found myself listening to both parties coming together and actually talking. Yeah. Actually listening and talking to each other. Mm-hmm. Especially like, yeah, and Joe Rogan as well, like learning and like going into those like spaces where you learn so much and you walk away with more questions. Yep. Because the more you find out, the more you understand that you don't know, you know, and found myself listening to more things that like I would have never listened to because I'm like, oh nah, I'm intolerant to that. I don't have the capacity to figure that out.
And there's also compassion for the times that you don't. You know, it doesn't mean that it's permanent. Yeah. There's also the compassion for the times that you don't. Like, it's like a lot of people that operate from the extremes are highly reactionary, like very raw.
Emotionally strung out.
Yeah, like, you know, they're coming from that, like, you know, super raw skin, like, can't touch it because it's going to hurt no matter what, you know? And it's like, and I don't want to invalidate anyone that feels that way because you're having your own experience and there's compassion and there's love in that space for you, you know? And I really just invite anybody who is a strong advocate on anything to really just evaluate how you are also having the compassion for the people who aren't believing in the things that you believe in, you know, because I found myself at times lacking that compassion. Mm-hmm. When it comes to certain topics and certain things, I've definitely been that person who's been extreme. I'm having this conversation because I've been so extreme so many times. You know, when I was vegan, I was the veganist vegan. I was the vegan that was like, I can't understand how people still eat meat with all the content that's out. Do we not understand what we're consuming? How are we not having this, that's that, and that's that? And it's like, okay, that's great. Like, for the moment, for what to me be checked off that vegan. Now I'm a part of this vegan crew that thinks that they're better than everybody else because we can consume. And the thing is about, like, you know, and I'm not saying everybody who is vegan is like this. I'm just saying that that was my extreme when I was it at the time that I was, you know. I was on and off vegetarian since I was 13, and I was like vegan when I think I was 23 or 22, something like that. And, you know, when I was doing that, it was like a boom. Like there wasn't as much vegan accessibility like there is on Staten Island now. But it was like, there's so many different aspects, like, to everything, right? When you claim, like, that vegan, right, you're expected to uphold a certain thing. You can't have an egg. You have an egg, you got to take that dot off, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't human, right? But at the same token,
you can't human.
You really can't. Like, you gotta just, you're now a vegan human. You can't subscribe to the unvegan humanism, you know? And, like, there's just, like, but then you come in contact with different people in the supposed group where we all go out to eat, and I'm going to an Asian restaurant, so I know that, you know, sometimes they put seafood into the broth, so I'm going to ask that question. But people aren't asking that question. So how do you know if you're vegan still if you're consuming byproducts of animals and stuff? It's the lack of knowledge and awareness. It's a lack of wanting to commit to something. And then it's the overcompensation of committing so wholly to something that you almost lose yourself into.
That's when it becomes personality.
Exactly. That's when it becomes the personality. And I feel like that comes up in so many different spaces and places, you know, like as a person who has always been very much so, like, I like who I like. And I never really tied a label to myself. Word. I've never felt super comfortable in the LGBTQ community because I wasn't subscribing necessarily to any particular
monoliths
or the lifestyle, you know, in the sense of, like, being a certain way or carrying on a certain thing. You know, there's a lot of different spaces where there is that, you know. There's any niche, any particular topic, there's always going to be an extreme version of that, you know. And the rarity is to find the people that are finding the balance within that. You usually don't find them in, like, in the center of it. Usually on the outskirts somewhere. It might be at an event, but they might not be, like, super, you know, involved. And the thing is, I want to encourage more people to be super involved in these events because we're needed. The people who are speaking, you know, like, say an LGBT, like, say Pride, you know what I mean? You want to have people that are in between. Like, I want to encourage the people that are finding the same knowledge that we are, because, you know, if we found each other and we're having this understanding, right, there's more people like they're out there like us. Whatever it is that you are involved in, that you are witnessing extremes in, it can be extremely intimidating and or testing to one's patience to want to involve oneself, because if not involved entirely, like, it could be, you know, there's space for either ourselves or others to judge and criticize the commitment to whatever thing we're advocating for. But I want to encourage anyone that's listening to this at any point, you know, that's the reason even more so it's needed. Like, we need to show people that there's middle ground. We need to show people that you can be accountable without being crucified. You know, that you can make a mistake and redeem. You could come back from anything. Like, I'm a firm believer in that. Like, you can really come back from anything as long as you are dedicating yourself fully to come back from that for yourself and for the collective. Like, finding that balance between both and really devoting your time and space to coming back from whatever it is that
respecting everybody's journeys.
Yeah.
Respecting everybody's journeys, and not everybody has the same equipment to navigate through life as you do, right? So it's like, of course, we're going to come to conflict. There's levels of conflict, too. Conflict is healthy. We've become a society that denies conflict. Like, like, any conflict is a hater. No, it's just going to raise some questions. Some, you know, you're just exposing some, you know, checked some things that's just been checked off, like, hasn't been checked yet, you know, like an advocacy, right? Like, and anything with advocacy, if it's not being innovated into, like, you know, being accounted for, as in, like, okay, if we're not challenging the concepts and we're not re-challenging old concepts and we're not updating things and really breaking ground, because everything changed within society, right? If we're not breaking ground and holding each other accountable, what are we really innovating then? Are we truly making progress, or are we just, creating, perpetuation as just safe? This is safe. It's always worked for us, right? But there are always things to improve on. There are always things to be accountable for. There are always new challenges that's going to make us face and look at things deeper than what it is, right? So it's like we can't always subscribe to things and think that this is just the basis, is going to stay like this forever. Nah, I want to investigate. Like, everybody should be investigating who they truly are, what that means to them. I love seeing people on the in-between, like you said, because it's like it makes life more interesting because it shows the realities of stuff, right? I love seeing groups of friends, because you see how different groups of friends are. Like, oh, that's that person. Like, nobody has, like, that squared away, like, group of friends. Not everybody has that, like, I love seeing friends like, oh, this is the dancer, this is the poet, this is the lawyer, I love that. Like, that's what life is to me. It's just, like, different flavors and different things. Like, they're so different, but they mesh well together.
Absolutely.
And, like, you have to give people the grace that their journeys is, like, everybody grew up different with different parents. Some grew up with one. Some people grew up with no parents. Like, that, whatever journey that people are on, give them the grace, because they haven't seen what you've seen yet, or they haven't experienced what you've experienced yet, right? So they may not be there or be present in your perspective as you would want somebody to be. It's like you're going to set yourself up for failure if you think that. If you think that everybody should think like you because this is the right way to think, nah, absolutely not. Two truths could coexist in one space.
I think that's why it's really big on when you're feeling like super definitive on something. That's like a really big, I would say it's a green flag to check in with yourself, right? It's a red flag to speak, probably. Like, green flag definitely seems like it's the time to check in, like, red flag, maybe just sit with it for a little bit before it comes out and you're like, you look back and you're like, oh, like, there's so many things that I've said in the past, like, even on this podcast that I'll listen back to and I'm like, ooh, I'm cringing.
Why
Okay,
did you do that?
I changed. I don't feel that way so strongly, and that could look at being like hypocritical. Some people look at that as hypocritical.
Definitely.
I feel like people love to throw that around.
Yeah, like, make a decision. Like, make it, like,
and it's like, but I'm constantly evolving. I'm constantly changing. How could I make the same decision based on my newfound awareness?
And I can't make a decision of stuff I don't know nothing about. Like, exactly. More about. I need to know more about something. I've now, how people be like, oh, and this is so easy. Oh my gosh. I noticed this, like, years ago too. Like, when people be like, a lot of people in conversation, they just agree with stuff. They don't necessarily know them. So it's like, let's say, like, it's like some trivia, like an inside joke, right? And you always see it's like one out of the group. There's somebody out of that group who don't know what's going on, but they gonna laugh. They go like, yeah. It's like, yo, you don't even know, do you? And I have gotten accustomed. I tried to get more accustomed to be like, nah, what is that movie? I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I've never seen it before. Yeah. Like, what is that? Like, or, do you know this person? Have you read that book? It's like, nah, tell me about it. I've made that a part of my language now to, like, nah, tell me more about it, because it's like, we don't want to be excluded from stuff. Yeah. We don't want to.
That's really where it's coming from. Yeah. It's like, I want to be a part of this laughing.
The fear of standing on your own. And that comes back into that full circle with them trophies. Stop giving everybody trophies, because you're making people feel the need that they have to be a part of something. Yep. It's like, oh, I'm if I'm not a part of something, it's scarcity. Or it's like I'm deprived of something if I'm not a part of this, or if I'm lacking, if I'm not the same as everything else. If I don't describe to something, I'm being, like, excommunicated, or I'm going without. There's a lack of something. No, it's not a lack of something. It's actually exposing you to, like, an opportunity to figure out what does work for you. It just makes like, it's giving you an
opening to your actual personality rather than.
It's an invitation to go, explore that, and
because we aren't these labels. Like, we're so much more than these, like, like a book isn't every chapter. It's the whole thing. And it's like, why are we going to just, like, minimize ourselves to be one chapter when we're a whole book? We're a whole series.
And it's not even the best chapter, CC. We always want the best chapters. We want the more exciting chapters. But then you miss the whole character build. Mm-hmm. You missed the building,
the whole
of the
arc, the whole thing.
You missed the whole arc of why they like that, why they even punch like that, why they even fighting, what's the fight. You're missing the. You always want the meat of the sandwich. You missing the bread, the tomatoes, you missing that umami. Like I said, that crunchy, sweet, bitter, savory, sour, salty. Like you missing all of those of a well-rounded piece, and all these pieces matter. They're for you. And just like all of these pieces are very valid and you need them, you have to respect somebody else's. That they may have different things about them. And not always will they correlate with you. And if it's not hurting you, let it be.
And the duality spectrum of you might have tomatoes on your sandwich, and I might have tomatoes on my sandwich, but mine were grown in this place, yours were grown in that place. Mine are yellow, yours are red. It's like at the end of the day, not being intimidated with the fact that people are going to do the same thing as you. Not hating on people because they're doing the same thing as you. Not being jealous or intimidated in that way that we then once again start to tear people down, which is another topic and another podcast that I'll actually be doing soon with a host that kind of came up organically with a post that she had put up. It was talking about like instead of being jealous or instead of copying me and just tell me that you're inspired, like just let me know that you're inspired. And like there's so much power in that. Like I literally learned how to do tattoo removal because I was inspired by my friend who was doing it in Puerto Rico. I messaged her. I was like, yo, I want to do this. Like I'm an esthetician. This is perfectly in my bracket. Can you tell me more? You inspired me. You know what I mean? But like that wasn't something not something that everyone has accessibility to. Like you have to come to that sense of like, I feel like people are super possessive, and I certainly came from that spectrum. Like, I was like, I actually found this song first. I don't know about you, but I found this song first, and I actually put you on it. So
that's me.
And it's taken me so long to, like, sit with the fact of, like, whatever. Like, it's cool, like, yes, to get credit. What was I fighting for? I wanted the credit that I never got for anything, right? So, like, I wanted to have my voice heard that was not heard, right? So, like, that was the basis of where that come from. Once I started nurturing that inner child and being like, it's okay, I give you the credit now. Like, I love you. Yeah, you found that song first. That's all right. You don't need to gloat about it. Right. You know what I'm saying? We know who really found it. Right? We don't gotta make it a big thing.
I was about to say, it's like, don't worry, because they got the song, you got the album.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like you find these mediums, but like, something that I always found joy in actually was letting people know that like I like source. So like when someone inspires me, I really like to tell them. I'm like, yo, like this inspired me, or this, this is how we got here. Like I like genuinely love giving credit
when it's due.
Yeah.
Just give the credit.
When it's due, absolutely.
When somebody, it's like you don't have to be my friend for me to big you up. Like, it's like
facts.
A lot of people that are around me are acquaintances, but it's like to people looking at outside, it's like everybody your friend. It's like, no. It's like they're not your friend. Like, nah, they not. They don't have to be my friend for me to respect them equally as a friend. Like, this is like, I give everybody that same respect. That's why some people, it's like, oh, I see you rolling with mad people. It's like, I really don't roll with a lot of people. I'm really introvert. But you introvert? Yes, I am. It's like, like when I go home, it's like we in the dark. Like, like in a good sense, like we just getting some peace. Like,
you find you balancing out the spectrum of all the light from outside.
Yeah, it's like, and like, from that, it's like, no, not everybody's my friend, but I respect it. Everybody has equal opportunity with me.
Well, that's the middle ground.
Yeah.
You're finding that acquaintance. Like, everybody can't be your friend. If everyone's your friend, then, like, you're putting an expectation out for everybody.
But I make sure everybody's seen, has an opportunity to be seen. And Absolutely. There's an environment that I'm setting. Like, at my Sonic Music event, it says an environment where I don't have to know you first base. Like, first base is I don't know you. I'm already shouting out compliments. Like, I love your hat. I love your pants. I love that. Like, I love your swag. Yo, thank you for your energy. Thank you for coming out. Like, and it's like, yo, everybody is validated in this experience with me because you're helping me build this. It's not only me. It's everybody who's in this room who bought a ticket. It's everybody who, you know, who shared it. It's everybody who couldn't even come. There were people who couldn't even come, but they just bought a ticket regardless. You know, and that's a blessing. It's like all those moving parts are necessary from the top to the bottom. And because of that, you're sharing this experience with me. You have a piece of that. You're building that piece of environment with me. You know, this vibe ain't only mine, you know, and that's what I don't take for granted. Everybody, every single person can be a blessing in somebody's life, right? Your devil could be somebody's angel.
Everybody plays a part.
God, do you know how many people in the streets robbing right now? And like from the outside looking in these communities that have like, you know, the funding and have the backing and it's safe and stuff like that. Like, oh yeah, black on black crime. It's like, that's not true. There's no such thing as black on black crime. There's a thing called poverty though. There's a thing called when you need them lights on and, you know, the fridge is low and the baby crying for like hours because there ain't no formula. We got to make it do what it do. You know, I got to be sometimes you got to be somebody's devil to be someone's angel. And that's horrible. And it shouldn't be like that. That's just the playing ground on the monopolize of like, you know, of this society of like capitalism. But it's like understanding that though. Just understanding what, you know, depravity looks like for some people, how it could look like. That's what the conversations we have to have, because then we could be like, okay, this is happening in real time. What do we do about it?
Then we can make the person who's doing the quote unquote such a bad thing actually get painted as a person, just doing their best. You know?
And now we could implement some safety where they feel like, okay, I'm fine. Now I'm being seen. Now I'm being seen while I slapped the manager because they was playing with me. Like, you know, and it's not right. I'm not saying it's right. None of this is right. None of it is right. But there are peaks and valleys in this life.
It's just neutral.
That there are peaks and valleys that we have to understand that's going to expose us. Either you could take the opportunity to learn about it and exploit it and then make a cure for it, you know, make a practice for the cure, or you can just see it for what it is, for what you think it is, and just leave it alone.
That's like two things that come to mind, you know, there's that meme or like little thing that's been going around that's like, you know, if you see someone stealing baby formula, you didn't see anybody doing anything. Like, just leave it be, you know. And then there's also, and I love that when I seen that, I was like, word, facts. Like, what are you gonna be? What are you really gonna do? Like, why would you be like, oh my God, miss, like she's stealing, like, yo, she's stealing baby formula. Like, even if she was stealing a banana, that's food. Like, let them live. Like, even if it wasn't, just mind your business. They have plenty of money, these big companies. You know what I'm saying? It's not like it's someone's mom and pop, you know. And either way, like, that, and then also the spectrum of like something that I've had to also adjust and adapt to, like, is like deciding what homeless people should do with their money, right? You know, like I used to be like, okay, I'll go get you food, like, you know, I got you, like, what do you want? And like sometimes I'll still do that, but I wouldn't give money because I'm like, well, they're gonna get drugs with it, like, you know what I'm saying? And I had a judgment to that, like, and then I started like reflecting. I witnessed like a friend of mine who used to be, well, an old friend of mine who used to be, he's in recovery. And I seen him not ask a question, not even think about putting a judgment on what a person should use for money. If he had $2 in pocket, he could $2 and that was it. And I'm like, this person knows from experience what this person's gonna do. So it made me reflect. And I was like, maybe I shouldn't gatekeep just what I'm going to donate at the end of the day. Like, if, unfortunately, if that's what that feels like, if like getting that money is their sovereignty, I'm not, you know, advocating here, like, go use this for drugs. Like, I'm not advocating that. But at the end of the day, like, they're a grown person. Like, if I feel like I want to contribute and they want whatever substance it is over a slice of pizza, like, that's their decision and that's their lesson. Who am I to deprive them and go that deep into their decision making? If my part is just to simply, if I feel good about it, I give it. If I don't feel good about it, I don't. Like, that's literally how I go. I go by energy. Like, when a person approaches me, or whether I see somebody, if it's like, if someone's pulling up on me on some crazy shit, like, nah, I'm good. Like, I'm going to keep it pushing. Like, yeah, you're not going to violate my space and then get rewarded for it. Right. You know, but like, if you are just existing, half the time people that aren't asking is the people I definitely give to. You know what I mean? Even people, if they come to car, I'm like, you out here working. Like, you're going up to each car, and, like, if you're being respectful about it, like, I will give you the change, and I'm going to see if I have some dollars. You know what I mean? I'd offered some canepas. I had canepas in my car. I offered some canepas. I was like, you want some canepas? He's like, nah, I'm good. Like, you missing out, but okay.
You missing out. Bang, them slappers.
Yeah, that ass. Like, you know, it's like, it's just removing that judgment, removing that control. And I think that that's a big basis of what we're talking about, too, is like, one of the underlying things is like fear of abandonment, of not being included, and it's also control issues that we have that are underlying and come out in these different ways.
Control because we were deprived. We know what being deprived is. Everybody know what being deprived of something is.
And feeling helpless.
So we want to control the temperature at all times.
Exactly.
At all times. We taking being gods to a sense of like denial though. Mm-hmm. That like you're not in control of everything. Yeah. It's like, you know, it's like, and also it's like you can build your own reality. You know, like you can do anything and everything. Yes, you can, but mm-hmm. that comes at like a tax and a cost.
It comes at a cost.
You know, like mm-hmm. we're not like let's not build a false sense of like, you know, strength here. Mm-hmm. It's like once again, everything comes at a cost. Everything you pour into something, you're losing something, but you're also, you know, expecting to gain something. Mm-hmm. Everything is just not this frivolous fairy tale of just like,
manifestation.
Yeah,
it's like we were talking about this on the phone. Like that's like such a big thing. Is like, yo, like manifestation is real. That's fine. You want to learn how to do it? That's cool. Be very mindful that if you are going to ask for something, just like we were talking about with the storage, right? If you're going to ask for something, first of all, you better make damn sure that you have space for it, or else whatever you're asking for is going to be brought into your reality and sat in front of you and you can't even fucking touch it, right? So that's number one. Number two, it's like, what are you giving? What are you giving? Because if you're constantly trying to manifest, conjure, call on different things, deities, energies, and you're not giving anything, best believe it's going to get taken. So instead of just not consensually choosing, or because you are consensually kind of doing it, instead of not choosing what you'd like to offer, make the choice of what you want to offer, you know, like, yo, like, I would like, you know, whatever the case is. And like, here is my piece of melon. You know what I mean? Like, here is it's something that's the same way if we're doing a barter system. You got to make sure it's fair. It might not be like societally fair, but energetically, like if you're asking for something, like, what are you giving? Like maybe you only have fruits. Maybe you only have some food that you made and you want to give that. Maybe you want to just give time. You want to give acknowledgement. You want to give thanks. Exactly. Like, you know what I'm saying? You got to give something. You got to give something, or else it'll be taken from you behind your back and you won't even know where it's coming from. Yeah. So now you wanted to manifest a new car, but now the new car you got to break down. Like, you know, you got to be like aware, you know, or the car that you wanted to trade becomes a dud, and now you have to get a new car. You know what I mean? There's different ways on how things manifest, and I think it's really important to find the balance of like, what am I getting, and what am I willing to sacrifice for this? What am I willing to offer for this?
I'm going through that right now, as like so many opportunities are coming my way, and I'm getting blessed with all of these, like, you know, being exposed to more things, and now things are easy attainable to, like, you know, the outreach of people just like now receiving me more and like, hey, yo, I have this opportunity for you, I have this for you, you know, and I'm like, this is great, this is lit, like, oh my God, like, yes, let's go, and it's all happy, but then it's like, yo, you got to start being accountable for certain stuff. It's like, yo, my sleep pattern off. Like, I need to be more accountable for my sleep, because how we going to do all these, you know, gigs and all of these opportunities, and how we going to find a balance? Like, yo, I need to fall asleep earlier. I need to get up earlier. I need to, you know, be on time more for these things. I have to make sure my energy is being delegated towards these things that, like, equally, you know, and some days it's going to be rougher than other, but, like, I need to have energy to execute everything that I need to do. You know, and with more blessings comes more accountability, more maintenance, more, you know, everything that you have, and more energy. So I totally agree with that. Like, I'm learning that right now. I'm sure everybody who's, like, the phone conversations with my friends who are going through the same thing as me, they're like, yo, I'm tired. You know, I gotta get more discipline on my health and on my stuff. I'm like, yeah, me too. Like, you know, and that's a beautiful thing. That's growth, though. That's growth. that's, you know, wisdom coming with it, and that's an understanding that, like you said, more blessings, more responsibility,
yep,
more maintenance. Like I said, like, yeah. So I totally agree with that.
Yeah, it's just about making sure that you're, just recalibrating, just constantly recalibrating, seeing like, all right, does this still feel good for me?
Stop being afraid of calibration. Stop being afraid of clocking in with yourself.
That's like that song. What is it? I don't wanna know. You know what I'm talking about? If you're playing me.
I don't want to know.
It's like, no, I want to know so I could do something about it. All right, like it's like why people don't want to ask questions because they're afraid of the answers, and that's a trauma response. So maybe you might not be ready in a moment, but maybe at another time you'll feel that opportunity come up, and maybe it's the time that you should, take the time to actually ask those questions and get involved in that. So, so to kind of bring everything to a conclusion on this episode of, finding balance, and, I think we covered a wide range of different topics.
People are like, yo, what are they talking about?
Nah, they definitely have, like that they definitely listen and tuning in and being like, yo, I resonate with that because, we're hitting all of the spectrums and coming at it with a compassionate mindset rather than
grace.
Yeah, with grace rather than attacking, and it's hard because we're both passionate people, so it's not like we don't have the ability to go on that end.
I will go up.
So we just pulled up with our bucket hats and our respect, and
like now he's gonna say that.
and we did our best. So thank you so much for coming on to the show. Is there anything else you would like to share?
Thank you. I'm happy to be here whenever you need me. Like, I'm here. Be on the lookout, guys, for like Sonic Muse 3 coming up September 30th.
Yes.
We actually have an event coming up this Friday.
Yes.
We in live sessions. We and that's so fitting. Life, you know what I'm saying?
Right,
so we're celebrating life. I'll be your host. Kaden is your boy coming through. She'll be vending. It's about to be a dope thing. We have performances. I'm going to be performing. So, like, come through, enjoy the vibes. Like, and just, pop in on us.
For sure. Definitely pull up. It's going to be at Hub 17 if you're local. And if not, just tune out. Yeah, shout out to Kenny.
Yes.
And, they pull up. It'll be, I think it's from 3 to 10, right?
It's from but
there's the opening at 2
for like cafe.
Okay.
It's a soft opening from
So
like 2 to 4, and then like 4 after is like gonna have performances. I'll be hosting 3 different DJs, so many vendors. So it's gonna be popping.
It's gonna be mad exciting. And if you're a consumer of herbal products, it's definitely the place that you'd like to be.
You got the goods.
Yep.
Yeah, we got the goods. Yes,
there'll be a lot of people with the goods there.
Yeah.
So there'll be a lot of options and things. And so to kind of seal us up, I'm feeling like I wanted to open up. Or if you'd like, you're more than welcome to open up to a page. Hold on, let me take this out so it's not biased. And this is a poem book. One of my favorite.
Let me feel out.
Whatever we're needed to.
Stop. Oh, that's crazy. It says know your power. That's crazy. Pamper your wishes. Oh, dang, it's some good ones. Okay. We gonna go know your power. Okay. Just as you can't deny that you can feel love and hate, happiness and sadness, anger and ease of mind, of tiredness and relaxation, you can't deny that you have a fate that sometimes you can't control. Wow, that's crazy. Okay. She always do this to me. Sometimes you can't control. That doesn't mean that it takes control over you. You can't deny that you have words that need to be spoken. You can't deny that you have a choice. You can't deny the ability that you can say no. You can't deny the ability that you have the freedom to make decisions and defend it. You can't deny injustice when you see it, unfairness when you feel it, oppression when you witness it. Stop blaming the world around you for wronging you. Take responsibility for the no's you could have said, but choose not to. The words you should have said, but didn't. Instead, wrapping your mouth with your own hands and remaining silent against what needed to be addressed. Take responsibility for the choices you could have made, but restrained yourself from taking. And that's know your power. You see what I'm talking about? Come on now. Come on now.
It's bullseye for me.
That's crazy.
Yo, it always does it. It always does it. It's all about the intention and just knowing, like, what is for us today. Boop. And it'll be like, this is what's
that just explain freedom. Like, yo, fact. Freedom.
Mm-hmm. And understanding our power and cultivating
and the chances we don't take them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, them, they, us. It's been real.
It's been real. And how are you feeling about chiming us out?
You want? Okay, let's do it.
You want to do it?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so today we have heart chakra bowl, quartz bowl. Oh, you could see. Can you just put down the screen? So you got heart chakra and we got throat chakra. And these were the bowls that, they came back because they were up last week. So now they're back today. So, for anyone who's feeling like they would like to tune into their heart and, speak from a grounded and a balanced place, this is the time to tap in. So I invite you to close your eyes if it feels good for you and just start to become aware of your body and setting the intentions that these bowls reach you wherever you're at and help you to sit with and nurture whatever comes up for you in a good way and create an exit point for anything that no longer serves you and an entry point for whatever does. That was beautiful.
Yeah, that was real good.
It's like the fact that they're still harmonizing.
Yeah. That was dope. I'm full. Like, mad full right now. That was dope. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Like we were saying before, it's like it's either going to be me just sitting up here or it's going to be us just sitting up here. But you play a part just as much as I play a part, just as much as everyone who listens plays a part. So thank y'all for also being a part of co-creating what this episode was. And we'll see you next time.